Welcome to the Career Refresh Podcast. I'm your host, Jill Griffin. I'm a former media and marketing executive turned career strategist and executive coach. I spent my career working my way up and through the ranks of global organizations and startups, and today I show others how to do the same. Join me each week as we discuss the strategies and actionable steps to leverage your strengths, increase your confidence, and develop your career well-being. Ready? Let's do it. Hi, this is Jill Griffin, and this is the Career Refresh. This week, I am introducing you to Kathy Hammond. She is a leader in sales and talent acquisition. She has an outstanding over $100 million revenue track record, and she excels in creating employee selection programs for top companies like Transamerica, Forever 21, and the city of Los Angeles. And overall, what she does is put in systems in place that deliver substantial savings and increase revenue. She has over 3 decades of experience. She also has a master's in organizational management, and she founded 2 successful recruitment solution companies. She is an award-winning author and global speaker, and she's earned the admiration from CEOs worldwide. In this episode, we talk about what employers and hiring managers need to know about recruiting for sales roles, and there's some myths out there. We also talk about passive and active candidates and some of the ways that, as someone who is recruiting or a hiring manager that's recruiting, what they can do in order to work through that process between an active and a passive candidate. We also talk about how to supercharge your talent acquisition process. Lots of tips and tricks for what you need to do, in addition to considering hiring Kathy. And what I like about this is for employees to hear the other side of the table, to hear what recruiters are doing, to hear what prospective employers are doing. It helps you also as an employee be smarter and learn how to navigate the process in today's job market. If you have questions, email me at hello@jillgriffincoaching.com. I am putting all of Kathy's information in the show notes, and also her predictable profits, the 7-step talent acquisition process to supercharge your revenue. You can learn about that program, also where to follow her on LinkedIn. So friends, have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Hi, Kathy. Welcome.
Hey, Jill. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
We've been having, for any of our listeners, we've been having some great conversation behind the scenes. And I think that you're definitely going to want to grab pen or your notes app and take notes on this episode, because there's a lot that we want to talk about, especially around recruiting and the current job market and marketplace. However, my listeners know I always ask, I start with, what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
Originally, I wanted to be a writer. And then that evolved into becoming an anthropologist.
Wow. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I wanted to be like the next Margaret Mead, and just look really about all the different cultures and people, and because people fascinate me. And then while I was in college and studying anthropology, cultural anthropology, and I found that there were some pretty disgusting habits that some of the cultures had. So I thought, okay, I'm out. Let me go back to writing.
But then you did get your master's in organizational management. So you did stay in that. What led you then from anthropology to organizational management?
Well, it was a circuitous route to get there, because I started out really in just kind of liberal arts, because everything for me was really about language arts and literature and all of that. So I guess maybe the communication aspect of education. And so, and then I stepped away from college for a long time and was working in sales. And as I was evolving, I always wanted to go back and finish my education. But what I started realizing was that a lot of the companies where I had worked myself, and friends and family where they worked, and seeing that some of them were just really poorly organized, And as a result, people were having difficulty trying to fit into an organization, to, thinking they had one thing in mind when they're joining the company, getting a new job, and then what was really needed or what was really the setup and so on. And then as I started then studying, like business coaching, and then went back to school and found organizational management because I love systems. So if you've got a system in place, then it's much easier for people to follow and to get those predictable results in anything that they would be doing. So then I started studying organizational management with emphasis in HR management, because people are the ones that are running the systems.
Yes. That's interesting. And then as our listeners will hear this today, that led you into creating an employee selection program. And you've worked for renowned clients like Transamerica, Forever 21, the city of Los Angeles. You've done really phenomenal work. I know you've generated millions in revenue and savings for these various organizations. And you've created this recruitment process. I think it would be helpful, before we get into a little bit more about today's subject matter, that you take our listeners through a high level of like, what is this process and why is it different?
Yeah. I eventually, I worked for several years for a company, one of the largest pre-employment testing companies in the US, and working with industrial and organizational psychologists that work there at the company and also at our client organizations purely for selection. And so making sure that you're going to bring in the right fit and being able to measure that, with the dimensions that were necessary to ensure that someone, was an employee, a candidate was a good fit. When I left that company, I started a sales recruiting agency. Sales is broken because there's not a particular. There are best practices, but it's best practices for a particular company, and that works well for them. But for a lot of companies, they don't have that in place because they don't know, because there's no barrier to entry in sales for any of the salespeople coming. Unlike medicine or law or engineering. But so that companies, they don't know how or what they're looking for in a salesperson, what's necessary for success on the job at their organization, what skill sets do they have to possess. And so, what knowledge, there's so many factors, but they don't know what that is. So in devising, with my sales recruiting agency, I wanted to help organizations not just be able to say, hey, here, I found some candidates for you and throw them over to you because here their resumes look good and they have some of the matching keywords that you're looking for. We don't do that. So at my agency, this is really about identifying exactly what is needed for success on the job at my client's company, first and foremost, and then going in and proactively searching for candidates that match what it is that they're doing. And that could be in terms of, a person who has a $10 million a year quota and sells $10 million a year. The person who's selling $500,000 a year cannot make that leap. They just can't.
Not without training.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's incremental. They have to, because there are different decision makers. There are different thought processes at the buying organizations. There's all of this, but a lot of hiring managers, they don't look at it that way. And they think, oh, they have a great personality and I like the way they look. And, we want to have the same alma mater, and all these different things this criteria that they use to hire that has no bearing on their ability to actually do the job. So as I saw the struggles that our clients were having, and that even after taking them through really a robust vetting process that we have at SalesFit, my recruiting agency, that they were blowing it with the candidates. They in effect thinking, well, no, I don't think that they're right for the job. Then I would ask them, well, tell me why. and they're not able to articulate it because it's just something because it's a subjective measurement that they're using versus objective measurement. So I built out this program to help organizations be able to identify what it is that they need, all the questions that they need to ask, to make sure that they are, culling this, making it a really efficient way to get candidates all the way through, and then having all the interview questions for hiring managers to ask based upon their specific sales process, which is essentially like a job analysis for the salesperson. But it's tailored because it's for them. It's not for another company. It's just specifically for them. And then ask those questions. And then they measure the candidate's response on a behavioral anchored rating scale against the subject matter experts in sales. So now you're going to be scoring candidates based on this, once they have the score, you're going to evaluate the one with the highest score, wins essentially because but there are other aspects too in hiring that you have to look at. But this way, now you have a purely objective measurement for the salesperson, because what we also have as human beings is the recency effect, so that the last person that we spoke to, that we interviewed, and they have, give us maybe a nice little glow and everything else. Well, that's what you're remembering. You're not remembering the conversations that you had, with the first candidate that you met, because no one's taking notes. No, what goes on behind the doors with hiring managers is, there's only essentially two people that know what was said and what was done. So, okay. But here, now you've got a way to really track what was said, so that you can reflect back on your conversation, looking at the scores and your notes for each of those questions.
What I hear you saying is the difference is a mixture of making sure that we're using objective measurement, which by default then would clear out potentially any unconscious bias that may be preloaded in the system. And in addition to there's also affinity bias, right? That I think happens a lot within hiring, where you went to my alma mater, you and I both work. I didn't know you, but you worked at the same company I did. Therefore, I feel familiar with you. You probably have the training, which, as we're saying, isn't necessarily vetting someone. It's just saying that those affinities gives you the bias in which you might think that they are the right person for the role. Really, really interesting. Okay.
And Jill, even more importantly, I mean, for people, if they doubt that and thinking, oh no, I can rely on my gut. Okay. Aside from, your gut having one of the lowest validity, coefficients of any interview method, I think it's 0.14. So it's very low. By having a process in place like this, it actually drives revenue by 340%, the studies have shown. And so by eliminating all those bias opportunities, and because now you're looking at saying, oh, this person has that skill that I need. And, and I tell, people this, that, in the 30 plus years that I've been in sales myself, any job interview I've ever gone to, nobody has ever asked me to prove that I know how to open the door to a C-suite, or how I write a winning proposal, or how I develop trust. These are all things that sales professionals, salespeople need to know how to do. And yet, over all these years, I've never been asked a single question. They just assume that if I put it on my resume that I, sold a $1 million account, that I must know how to do all of those things. But I can tell you from experience, a lot of experience in recruiting, and also from studies, Caliper Corporation, they did dozens of studies on this, and they found that 55% of people in sales should not be.
Wait, why? Because they're not effective in meeting the goal that's been put in front of them, or for some other reason?
They have no sales. Sales is not just something that anyone can do.
Of course, of course.
It requires certain traits, perseverance, the ability to really, like handle rejection a lot.
I say the rejection muscle has to be strong.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of people that are just not cut out for sales. They don't have talent to be really good at sales. It's one of the highest paying professions in the world. So to be really, and people look at that and go, oh yeah, I can make a lot of money in sales. Yeah, but only if you're good at it. I mean, I can look at basketball and say, hey, listen, I could make, hundreds of millions of dollars in the NBA, but I don't have the ability to play basketball. I don't have that talent. I don't have what it takes to do that. And so, but because, like I said, there's no barrier to entry in sales. So anybody just walks in the door. But unfortunately, 55% of them are not skilled at doing this. But then there's another interesting stat, which is from those studies, 25% are selling the wrong thing.
Meaning they should be selling something different versus what they're selling currently.
Correct. So people that, you look at product versus service sales, and, there's some people are just better suited, or like door-to-door sales. My earlier career, I spent many years in commercial security sales. And one of the companies I worked for was a wholesale alarm monitoring company, a big national organization. And they had, like the door knockers for these companies, because they were buying contracts from individual alarm companies. And so they had their door knockers going out and selling alarm systems, like they come to your home and sell pest control and different things. I could not do that. I couldn't do that kind of thing. I'm not even sure how I would even approach it at a homeowner walking up, doing that. Car sales. You can make a lot of money in car sales, but those are usually one-off purchases. I need to really my mind goes to the more complex. And so I can look at an organization and say, okay, here's all the things where they're having issues. And I can pick, pull all the different solutions and combine them in such a way that will solve their problem. And so these are all different skill sets. So
do you think these skill sets, some of them can be taught or learned on the job? Or do you think there's a level of, like, as Gallup would say, like you have strengths and you can lean into them and you'll get better. But if something is not in your wheelhouse, you might get a little bit better, but it's never going to have the payoff as if something is a natural talent. Do you think that you can learn these things, or is someone who goes into sales really has to have the natural talent for it?
I think that you need a propensity, because talent, can be refined over time. I mean, you listen to early, I saw this interview or read something about Ed Sheeran, and then heard his like first tapes, like when he was doing, and he was horrible. And you see some of the other ones. So, but they had a propensity, and they had other things where they were driven to refine their skill.
Okay.
And so, but a lot of people, they get frustrated because sales can be a slog, a good portion of the time. So you've got a bunch of lows and then one really big high, which keeps you going to the next one. And some people just aren't cut out for that. Some people can't.
Resilience, perseverance is just as important as the more softer skills of being able to, like, read the room or work with a consultative sell that might take a little bit of longer lead time. So it's both those sides is what you're saying.
Well, it depends on what you're selling, like for that lead time. But there's just, for each of us, we're all really complex human beings. And so, and so you can pull out a few of those traits, those characteristics, but it's like, and you could make a career doing it, but you're not going to be a top performer. And companies just can't afford to have mid or, like mediocre or underperforming salespeople.
Sure.
And the stakes are too high for them.
Okay.
So this is really more about like if you're going to go into something and you're going to be, you want to be in sales, then you have to be the absolute best. And then you have to understand, you start studying it and start really, and if you're that passionate about it, it means that you already have something inside of you that says, okay, you're built for this. But the other thing that you need is you need to be smart. You need intelligence for sales, and you can't be lazy. I mean, these are, so there's just certain aspects. So if you're looking, if somebody's looking for, an easy job, thinking, oh, this is all about going out and entertaining clients and playing golf, you'd be wrong. And that there are like 24 different aspects of like job tasks within for sales. And if you're going to be good, you have to be good at all of them.
Okay.
Right down to, how are you asking for referrals? Do you? Most of them don't. Most people don't. It's kind of like, they run in, make the sale and run out of there and don't
move
do anything
on.
more. Yeah.
So for anyone who's listening, who's thinking or questioning, I'm in sales, should I be selling, let's say they're not necessarily making the number, they're finding it, what is it the year, is the economy, is it something around their own personal training? You said something that I want to go back to that I thought was interesting, like selling a service versus selling a product. Are there things for any of our listeners, both on the hiring side or the person who wants to be hired, that they should be looking at as to whether or not they would fare better on the service side of things or the product side of sales?
They won't know it until they get into it. And because there are so many different types of products, and then you have, almost like a hybrid, product service kind of a situation. It's until you actually begin, until you have an opportunity to sell both, you may not know where your sweet spot is.
Okay. So basically try it. So that
because
into the question that you and I were talking about before around active and passive candidates. It's just making me think like,
right.
You might be well employed. You might like your job, your organization, and what you're selling. So you're passive. You're not necessarily in the market. How would you define then the difference between, as you see, passive and active candidates?
So an active candidate, I'll start with that. An active candidate is someone who is actively looking for a job. They are going onto job boards. They're asking around, they're making applications, they're doing all they're actively involved in their search. This is, generally somebody who is, very unhappy in their current role, or they just want something more. Somebody who has been laid off, or quiet or loud quit, or whatever style that they're going to use. Whereas a passive candidate which actually represents 73% of of a company's candidate pool, interestingly. Wow. These are people that are not actively looking, but are open to hearing about new opportunities.
Okay. So are there other motivations that sort of differentiate them from active candidates besides being opened?
They're not, in many cases, they're not unhappy where they are. They're typically well employed, well compensated. It would take something really significant to move them, which means then you have to look for, these are not people that are going to will not make a lateral move. There's no need for them to make a lateral move. And this is where a lot of employers have, I think they have a struggle with that concept, because they see someone that has exactly what they want, that skill set and all of that. But and they think that because I'm offering the same thing and we happen to like our company a lot better than where you are, the employer's thinking this, that you should just want to join us just because. And I tell employers over and over again, nope, that's not how it works. And that if they're going to make a move, and if it's an actual, lateral for responsibilities, then you're going to have to do something more, like pay them 30% more than what they're currently making. They have no motivation to move over to your company otherwise. Or you're going to give them a larger sales territory, for example. Okay. And now, so whereas they were maybe a smaller regional, now they're going to maybe pick up a few states more, which is going to be able to expand their earning opportunity on that. And you may get someone a passive candidate who may be on a, bad day having, with their manager, because, people leave managers, they don't leave companies.
Right.
And you catch them on the right day, they may be willing to make a lateral move just to get out of there. Now, that's not ideal because they're running from something, not to something.
And I always say that when I work with clients, both on the career strategy and the executive coaching side, is like, we've all been in the interview, whether it's a panel interview or an individual interview, where someone's resume is given to us and the resume is great and we're excited to meet them. And then we meet them and there's something off. There's something that like isn't equating. And it's exactly that. It's someone who either didn't want to move or was leaving and maybe feeling a little disgruntled against their organization, or they're doing well and then you're dragging them and they're only taking the role because you're throwing a lot of money at them. And, what we find, to your point about managers versus organizations, we find is that those candidates tend to either one, as you're in the interview, you sense that there's something that's like a misalignment here, or if they somehow squeak through and get employed, they tend to leave very shortly after. They tend to maybe stay a year. So the effort going into bringing in that employee is just not necessarily worth it, because it was someone that you kind of dragged there because the carrot of money. And look, who doesn't like money? Money's good, but it can't be the only reason why you're bringing them in.
No, but this is why employers need to make a sales argument for why someone should join you. The fact that you exist, listen, they're already, unless there is something going on, they're already well employed. And so they, and they listen, they're, all the people that we go after for our clients, they're all passive. They're all passive candidates. We don't post on job boards. We just, because we really narrow our search to exactly what we're looking for. And we don't want to we don't want to spend any time going through a lot of irrelevant resumes that come across through the job boards. And so, but if a candidate is open to new opportunities because maybe the growth isn't great, at the organization. Maybe, you got people who've, there's no upward mobility. You've maxed out your territory, or maybe they're shrinking your territory. There's, all kinds of things that can happen. But in that case, then you want to make yourself as an attractive, a passive candidate as you can, because any of the recruiters that would be, because everyone's going to go to LinkedIn, everyone is. And I see, so many people they've become so complacent in their current job, and which I tell everyone, don't do that, because anything could happen. Mergers, acquisitions, board of directors could be indicted and you're all out of work. Anything could happen. And so it's, make sure that you have a top-notch LinkedIn profile. You've got some serious, valuable real estate up at the top there on the banner. And it's like, let people know what you're all about and what your phone number is and your email address. I mean, always put that in there. People have to know how to be able to get in touch with you. And then build out all of, not a regurgitation of your job description, but put in there actual accomplishments. You may not want to include, like specific client names or anything like that, and that's fine. But I mean, you can be generic about that, but really do bullet points. People are not reading these long paragraphs.
No,
or if you just put in there, I worked at this, XYZ company. Here's my dates of employment, and this was my title. That doesn't tell anyone anything, and it also shows that you might just be a little too complacent, especially if you've been with a company for a very long time. And so that's going to send out some different signals to recruiters when they're.
That makes me wonder, active, like which is more desirable, active or passive candidates?
You know, it depends. I would say it really does depend because things happen. And as an employee, you don't have control over what a company does that can have you lose your job. You have no ability, for that.
Right.
So if they've got a really strong position and as an active candidate, they can really bolster themselves instead of waiting for somebody to find them, because really what you're trying to do is cover all your bases. You want to have, a really, decked out LinkedIn profile so that people actively looking, the recruiters will be drawn to you. And then as being an active candidate, what you want to do is now be proactive in your search. And so you have to start identifying, you have to start thinking like a marketer. And you are the product that you're going to sell. And if you're in sales,
I always say that to people, you are the product you're selling.
Yes. And so it's, get your resume together and get it done. I always say, get it done professionally because we're not resume writers.
And you're not career counselors, which again is why,
Yes.
Working with, if you have a mentor, hiring a coach, working with someone who understands how to shape the story, do the narrative, the career narrative that you want, and help position you for what that particular opportunity is. Not every opportunity is going to be positioned the same way. Knowing those nuances is really where your work is as a candidate before you start to talk to someone like Kathy, for those of us that are in the market.
Well, or even to the organizations.
Yeah.
But for those, and this was something, I'm glad you brought that up, because then I have a question on this. So someone who is going to proactively seek out employers, do you do something different, with your services to prepare them for that? Because they're doing the outreach to the employer, versus responding to a job post or
great
something.
question. I mean, much like your LinkedIn is your marketing document, your resume is the single source of truth. There may be things that you put on your LinkedIn that you wouldn't put. Or let me say it the opposite. There may be things you put on your resume that is a more confidential. You're not going to spam it out to the world. Again, we're never going to reveal confidential information. We're not going to reveal numbers that we shouldn't be revealing. But again, LinkedIn is more of the marketing document where the resume is a single source of truth. What I'd also say too to people is that if you are recently unemployed, you have to check with the terms of your separation, but for a month or so, you may want to think about not ending the date on LinkedIn. We know that LinkedIn suppresses the response rates of people who basically are showing that they're out of work because their job closed out, 2 months ago, and now it's showing that. We know this because recruiters, when they're paying for the service, are going in and they don't want candidates that are, quote, unemployed. So I am not suggesting that you do anything ethical or dishonest. I'm simply saying, why don't you pause and maybe wait for a month or so. However, your resume is the single source of truth. Your resume says when the job ended. Your LinkedIn, because of SEO and search, may still stay open-ended. Again, that's something you need to decide for yourself. Talk to a mentor, talk to a career executive coach, and help you figure out how you're going to do that. So that's part one. Part two is when you're approaching an organization, you really need to think about the networking that you're doing, and you need to think about really strategically how you're going into that conversation. Because if they had a job, it might be posted, or they might have told people that they're looking for a job. So you going to them and saying like, hi, I'm looking for a sales manager role. Do you have anything available? Or your variation of that isn't going to be a very productive conversation because you would know that already. What you do want to do is come to them with really smart, intelligent questions that are not Googleable. If you can Google the answer, don't ask it because they are not there. If you're getting someone's time to spend 20 minutes with you to network, their job is not to review your resume, to tell you what to do next, right? All of those things are not them. That's what you're going to get and talk to a mentor or a coach about. What you want to go to a networking interview or a networking meeting about is asking them something really pertinent to that individual. Again, if it's on the company website or if it's in their own LinkedIn bio, you don't need to ask them the question. So we're talking about questions like, how did you find your way into this career? How did you like, working within this particular company versus that type of company? Again, it's kind of a broad area to dig in, but you have to use your own, probably very similar to being in sales, being able to read the room and understanding the types of questions you would ask somebody. And then that is going to help you show them that you are a really like consultative, responsive type thinker because you're asking questions and engaging the person in a dialogue and an operation. And then of course, reciprocity. Before you leave that conversation, you also want to make sure, is there anything that I can do for you? Is there someone you're looking to meet? Oh, you're looking for sales associates and junior level people? I might know some people. So those are the things that I tell people when they're networking and trying to get into a company. Obviously, making sure that you either know the person or there's 2 or 3 degrees of separation, which is what LinkedIn is great for, helping you see like what you might have in common with the person. But having that and then coming at it strategically and thinking through questions that are not about the job market. They're not about the economy. They're not about things, again, that are Googleable, but there's something specific to your experience, the person you're speaking with experience, and the company, product, or service at hand. So again, you got to do your research.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And, I'll have several people come to my agency and say, I'm looking for a job. They don't tell me what they're looking for or why anyone would want to hire them. And, it's just say, well, I was just laid off. So I'm just putting that out there. You need to also treat recruiters as you would the employer. That's the other thing. People do treat us differently. And we represent our employers. So if I see something, in those interactions with candidates, I can kick them out of for any consideration, because we're being paid by the employer on the recruiting side.
Do that filtering.
Yes, filtering. Yeah. Right. But that's why, like with the recruiting system that we now have online, as a separate service for companies, the recruiters, even at, the companies, because it involves, HR and if they have on-site recruiters there, and then also their hiring managers are the 3 people that are the 3 groups that are involved with using the system, that it also, we help the recruiters when they're doing screening to be able to get to the meat of things with candidates. And so because you want to, we call them knockout questions essentially. And because you don't want hiring managers spending time with irrelevant candidates. Right. And so it makes it really incumbent upon the candidates to be really crystal clear about what value they're offering to an employer. And they have to understand too, that not every job, just because you think, okay, well, I think this would be good. Not everything is going to be a match, just like when you're dating, not every person, is Prince or Prince Charming. It's just, that's not how it is. So, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means it's not right. That's not a right fit. So, but you can help the process, like a job candidate, a job seeker, by being really clear on, what value, why would somebody hire you
to the organization?
Yeah. Cause I see that with a lot of candidates, and they say, well, my objective is to X, Y, and Z, and you're like, okay, well, that the employer doesn't care what your objective is. If I'm the buyer and they're a buyer, right? If I'm the buyer, I want what I want, not what you want. Not what you've got to sell.
That's why I always tell people you have to position yourself as the solution to their problem. And you might say, but I don't know what their problem is. Well, that's where your work is. You have to think about who that person is, where they're sitting within the organization, what business they're in, product or service, and think about what might their challenges be in today's marketplace, and then position your story, your narrative for how you are the solution to their problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sales.
Right. Right. And again, coming back to where we started, and you are the product that you're selling in this market, right? If you're looking to get a job. So I want to just go back to what we said before, like when we were talking about passive versus active candidates, I've heard this before, less when someone's hiring me, because if they're hiring me to work with them as their executive coach, they are active and they're in the market and they're looking proactively to make a change. But I've heard this a lot amongst friends and colleagues. And when I did work in corporate, I would hear this a lot. They're almost just like, I could get a job at any time. This idea that I'm in my job, I like my job, but I could get a job anywhere at any time. So there's almost this mindset that they don't have to keep working to get a job. And I want you all to know that that's not true, right? You may have had years in which you were the hot commodity, but markets change, people change, people in the roles that are hiring change. So you have to make sure that you are, maybe you sit somewhere between the passive and active. And I'd love to get your take on this, Kathy. I mean, obviously you meet hundreds of people regularly. You have top clients that you're recruiting for and helping them with their recruiting and acquisitions. What do you think that someone should do about always being ready? How would they approach the market if they're in this place where they're like, yeah, I'm not really looking?
I'm reminded, this reminds me of the book, Who Moved My Cheese? And, the complacency is your biggest killer. And I think that even if you have many years at a company and you've been doing well, and if something happens where they let you go for whatever reason, and you're going to have a shock to your system, that not everybody's going to be flocking to your door just because you said, hey, I'm available here. Because again, each company is different. Each thing is set up. They may already have, people in place that do that particular job already, and they have no intention of getting rid of them just to move you in. So it's always be, ready, like they say in Spencer Johnson said in that book, have your little tennis shoes tied around your neck and be ready to move the moment they move the cheese. So it is, and to do that, to accomplish that, means always being open to, and actually now that as I think about this, recently when we're doing a recruiting for one of our clients, and sent out a message to someone, an email, and they marked my personal email as spam. And I thought, that's really interesting, because of course that goes into our applicant tracking system. Yeah. We have it set up to where now there's no more emails that will go out to this individual. But if they contact us at any point in there, it's like, why would you reject just even a reach out? I mean, because the level of arrogance at this point, on their part, is that how they operate? Now I'm having to infer a lot of other.
Let me ask you a devil's advocate question on that. I remember back in the day, recruiters would contact me through my work email. I, as the employee, can't win. If I forward the email to my personal account to respond, you can see that. If I respond from the email, they can see that. So if I'm an employee and a recruiter actively reaches out to me, and whether I'm interested or not, I can't respond without the company is going to, they look at our emails, right? So what do you do?
Well, first thing, I don't send to anyone's company email address.
Oh, well,
for that reason.
That's your excellence. That's your excellence, right?
And if I cannot locate their personal email address, I mean, we're pretty good at being able to locate them, but if I can't, then I will send a personalized message through LinkedIn.
There you go.
And because I don't want to detract from what they're currently doing. I don't want anyone to have any, kind of a, fear of anything from the company happening.
Yeah.
Because it's just setting things off on a wrong note.
You're not respecting that you might be busting me, getting me in trouble. Okay.
Yes.
That's really good. That's good to know. Again, there's probably less of that in this market because there are people looking, but there's still a lot of silly things that go on.
Well, no, and recruiters do that. Now, at the same time, if I know that you are the perfect candidate, okay, from what I can tell, and I just know that this would be a tremendous opportunity, the question comes down to then back to the candidate that we're targeting. Would you prefer that I not find some way to reach you? If that's my only other option left, would it be better that I just not bring that to your attention? That this could be like the most brilliant career move ever in there for you. But if I can't talk to you, then if I can't get with you somehow, then you don't get that. You lose that opportunity. And really, how many employers are really monitoring employees' emails like that?
Yeah, probably not to that level, but I mean,
some do, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've worked in organizations where you're being monitored.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's all a balance. I think, as long as like a recruiter, whether even like an internal recruiter for a corporation versus a third-party recruiting agency, as long as they're balancing that respect for the candidate and for their circumstances, and that you can find alternate ways to be able to communicate with them, that's what they should be doing, because you don't want to put anyone in a bad spot. At the same time, but I going back to that guy who marked the email as spam, like they're unsubscribing. It's a personal email for me. It's not like auto generated or anything that we send out. Because we're so highly targeted. And I thought he just loses all opportunities than anything going forward, so that if he were to lose his job, a year down the road, it's already in our records that we were completely dismissed by him. And the recruiters aren't trying to do anything to harm candidates.
No, because that's the recruiter's reputation. No candidates would work with them, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And they're reaching out because they, for the most part, they really believe that, okay, maybe there might be an opportunity here for you that you might want to hear about. So we're not the enemy on this.
Yep.
And then even as part of our the recruiting system that we now have available for sale, our actual 7-step process for this, we have it to where it actually respects that part of it, and we train the recruiters how to go about finding these people so that you're not disrupting them, and at their workplace, and how to get to them, and be able to get messages to them. So, because it is a concern for candidates. I mean, I had a recruiter call me at a company, and I remember he was very aggressive with me, and he said, I will demand to see your W-2 and your employment agreements and some other stuff that he was requesting to make sure that you have a minimum $100,000 base before I'll, connect you with my client. And I thought, first of all, I don't know who he is. I don't know why I would share any of my own personal, financial information, and what that has to do with my ability to do the job. I mean, but some of them, would get aggressive, and he kept calling my office line, my extension at my desk. So I thought that was pretty gutsy. I also I wouldn't talk to him anymore, after that. That was
right.
Yeah.
So the last question that I would have for you is, what can passive candidates do to really elevate themselves, meaning we don't know what we don't know. So maybe I am interested. I'm happy today, but maybe I am interested. So what can passive candidates do if they get an outreach to keep themselves in the game?
Schedule a call with whoever contacted you. That's first, and there's nothing happens just by hearing out what the opportunity is. Now, if a recruiter, and also one of the things that we train in this, the actual messaging that has to go out to the candidates so that you really are, attracting the ones who really would be interested in exploring this further. The other ones, because they have enough information to actually make a decision on, is this something that fits in with my career goals, my compensation goals, my, all of it. And we have this really compact messaging that we train people on how to do. And so that you end up, we've got like an 83% open rate on the emails, the system that we have. And so that we're having lots of much higher engagement, so that, because we have a really fast turnaround for our candidate shortlist of 18.4 days on average. So by using this process. And it is, but it gives them that control of saying, yeah, I want to pursue this, or no, thank you. And, and I get a lot of people that, will respond and say, hey, thanks for contacting me. But, I'm very happy where I am now. Mm-hmm. Some I've talked into reconsidering, because I think it probably would be a better deal for them. But have an up-to-date resume on hand in case you're going to be able to move things along much more quickly after that phone call. Ask a lot of questions. Ask whoever is contacting you, the recruiters, ask them, as much as you want. I mean, because you're making an investment of your time to get to know the organization. This is not about, you're picking me. Oh, and that's the other thing too. Just because a recruiter contacts you and gets you into the process does not mean you're the only one.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I get some that just feel like, well, it's all up to me to decide what's going on here because you called me. And, but I always tell them, listen, there are other candidates in this process. And, but I think that, you have a really good shot at this. Right. And I'm going to help you, to really, up your game. Right. But it's really about being, maybe being curious. Again, we have no control over what things happens. That we don't have control over.
Right. So what I'm hearing is being curious, which starts with taking the call, having the conversation, making sure your LinkedIn profile is updated, making sure your resume is updated, and then making sure that you are thinking about how you will add value to an organization or why you're the strategic solution to their problem. And then, yes, a little bit is to the game of chance, of matchmaking, of who you know, how you network, what they're looking for, the chemistry of the individuals involved, and some things that can't really be measured, but doing the other pieces of it is really, is going to give you the best shot. Kathy, I thank you for putting the spin on, so often we talk to the recruiters who are recruiting for employees. I think it's really important for employees or people who are candidates in the marketplace to hear the perspective of the recruiter and the business side and what they're looking for so that they can also shape themselves to be better candidates. So I thank you for sharing with us today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about this, because it really is about, we're in this together, and so that, and leverage the recruiters that are contacting you as a resource, because you may have other different career aspirations, and they have other clients too, maybe, that maybe something else would be more interesting. So, again, if we're in this together, then we all win.
That's great. I'm going to put Kathy's information in the show notes, both where you can follow her on LinkedIn. Also, she has a recruiting system, Predictable Practice, which is the 7 steps to talent acquisition process to supercharge your revenue, which is a great tool for business owners. And I'm going to also put how to find that in the show notes. Kathy, again, thank you for being here today. And if there's any questions that come in, please email them to hello@jillgriffincoaching.com. We will get those questions to Kathy and we'll bring her back on the show and answer some of those questions, get those FAQs answered. So thank you for listening. And Kathy, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jill.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Career Refresh podcast. If you're enjoying this and you want more information, go to my website, jillgriffincoaching.com. There you can find information on how to work with me one-on-one or my group programs, or even bring me into your workplace. I'll put the link to my website in the show notes. But hey, listen, before you go, do me a favor, rate and review this podcast because it definitely helps me get the word out to people everywhere so that they can also thrive in the workplace. All right, friends, I appreciate you. I'll see you soon.